All right, 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM listeners, you already know what time it is, and right here we actually have an iconic individual within the music industry. We got Cozmo D of Newcleus right here live on the line, man. How are you doing this evening?
What's up, baby? How you feeling?
I'm doing great, man. Best I can possibly be. Just dealing with this Canadian heat wave, man. I'm telling you, it is definitely the time of year where all of us Canadians wish we had a snowstorm coming our way.
I don't know about all that. I've been up in Toronto in the winter, and that ain't fun.
I have to admit, I actually have to say, now that you mentioned that and me actually pictured that in my head, it's like, no, I think I'll stick with the heat wave and the sweating for a little bit longer.
I'm telling you.
But Cosmo, I know you came by the radio station to talk about your amazing career and, of course, not the Canadian weather, so I'm going to dive right into this, man. But I want to take you back to the amazing year of 1977, where you were actually a part of a DJ collective known as Jam On Productions. I was wondering if you can actually just tell our listeners that might not be quite familiar with this part of your career, just the story behind this earlier group, and, of course, what was it like just DJing all around Brooklyn in the late 70s?
Oh, man, it was heaven. What we like to call hip-hop heaven. Before we called it hip-hop, of course. And DJing all over Brooklyn, it's still, I still get chills when I hear a car with a booming system, because that's what it sounded like when somebody was DJing in a park somewhere, and you went and you found out where, so you can hopefully set up against them to battle.
And I have to ask, man, just when you say like setting up against a battle and whatnot, do you actually remember the first battle you actually had in those parks? And then, of course, if you do, who did you actually battle back in those days?
Half the time you didn't even know who the cats were, or you forgot who they were after you battled them. No, I can honestly say I don't remember my first battle. I know what park it was in, but no, I don't remember who we were battling. Probably a cat I never saw again. Yeah, that was early '77, and there's a school called Old Nine, because there's a new PS9, and it was an old PS9. This was Old Nine. They had a little park in the back, and we battled there.
And I gotta say as well, man, just those days just sound so simple and so amazing. Nowadays, you know what I mean, people get, nowadays within the music industry, if you were to do that nowadays, individuals get mad and probably a fight would break out. But it sounds like back in those days, it was just so laid back and everyone was just kind of competing just for fun.
It wasn't always fun. There were fights that broke out occasionally. There were some crews that didn't like other crews and stuff like that. But for the most part, it was just straight up competition. You know, who had the better system, who could pull the crowd. That's what it was all about.
And of course, Jam On Productions was actually an earlier origins of Newcleus. I was wondering if you can actually just tell us a bit more about that transition. And of course, how did Newcleus originally come to be out of Jam On Productions?
Jam On Productions was DJ crew, and we're still alive. Matter of fact, my production company is called Jam On Productions. You know, and that developed out of the DJ crew. What happened was, my first cousin, Monique, also known as Nikki D, and my soon-to-be wife, a couple of years later, Lady E, Yvette, she was an MC, and Nikki D was a DJ. And I had been in a band called Thunderfunk with Bob Crafton, who also lived on our block in Bed-Stuy. And he played bass in the band, and I was a singer. And so when after I started getting into making music, Nikki D sort of put me and Bob together, Chili B together, and the four of us, me, Lady E, Nikki D, and Chili B, we all became a nucleus of three families, and that's where we got the name Newcleus from. I'm skipping ahead because, you know, we only got so much time to get there, because I could write a book about this history, but eventually that's how we got the name Newcleus, and that's how we split off. But all the time, Jam On Productions kept going, kept DJing, and my son is even DJing to this day.
And I gotta say as well, Chili B actually played phenomenally, not only at the keyboards and the bass. I gotta say, the two combinations that Chili did was just phenomenal. I really love the keyboard work.
Well, most of the keyboard work is mine. Chili B played bass and some keys, but I played most of the keyboard stuff and did all the programming.
And also as well, in 1984, you guys actually released the album Jam on Revenge. I was wondering, from what you can recall, can you actually tell our listeners just the story behind this iconic record? Because personally, in my opinion, that's one of the albums that really stands out within Newcleus history.
Thank you. Well, before we became Newcleus, that was the long story I was trying to skip over to avoid. The four of us were calling ourselves Positive Messenger, and we were making music with messages and spirituality, positiveness and all that. That was what we were all about. But I'm also still DJing in Jam on Productions, and I would play this stuff at the parties. And one of our DJs asked me to make a rap record. So instead of making a rap record, because remember, I'm a DJ, I'm not an MC. I used to rap, and so did Chili B, but we were both DJs. Chili B was a DJ with his own crew. And so I sat down and I made a anti-rap record, in the vein of like George Clinton, making fun of rappers and stuff like that. And I called it Jam On's Revenge. So as we worked on the Positive Messenger stuff, I made up a tape to shop to the record companies, and I had space at the end of the tape, and I took that cut, Jam On's Revenge, and put it on the end of it. And I played it for a guy that eventually signed us, Joe Webb, and he loved all the stuff. He loved all the Messenger stuff. But when he heard Jam On's Revenge, he said, "No, that's it. That's the hit." And I said, "Well, we just made that. I just made that as a joke." He said, "Yeah, but that's the hit." So I said, "Okay, well, if we're going to do this kind of stuff, then we can't call ourselves Positive Messenger because that name, had a meaning and a connotation." So that's when we came up with the Newcleus name. So when the Jam On's Revenge came out, it was a hit. Then the record company asked us to do a rap record, and I came up with Jam On It. Both of those groups, you notice both of those songs are named after the DJ crew. They have nothing to do with Positive Messenger. But when we came down to do the album, all of that stuff that we took off and put on the album was the Positive Messenger music that we had that was sitting, that was originally on the tape that I was shopping. And that's how the album came together.
And I gotta say as well, definitely such a phenomenal project, honestly. I definitely thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And I have to ask, does that album actually, I do know obviously this was released way before streaming services were even thought of, but has this album actually been uploaded to the streaming services as well?
Yes, it has.
So you heard it here, guys. If you haven't heard this album, make sure you go stream it today and run those numbers up as well.
Yeah, please do.
And also as well, I actually read a very thorough article actually online, and this is something I actually did not know about Newcleus, but I read as well that you guys actually went on the road with Run DMC for the first hip-hop arena tour. I was wondering if you can actually just tell our listeners the story just behind this eventful tour, and of course, what was it like just being a part of hip-hop history alongside Run DMC?
Oh, man, that was one of the greatest times of our lives. It was fantastic. We, at first, were on tour with Cameo and O'Brien, because we were a live band. We went out and we played our music live. But they chose us to open up this tour. And it was us, Fat Boys, Houdini, Curtis Blow, and Run DMC. And we had an alternate stage, and in between the music acts, we had break dance and pop dancing acts. It was an amazing show, and it ran all through the country. And they did it the second year, but we weren't on the second year. But the first year was the most phenomenal thing ever. It was amazing, and to this day, I'm giddy about it. And it was a complete honor because we opened the show. And so we got to catch people as they were coming in, and, you know, nothing like this had ever been seen before. And it showed the diversity of hip-hop. It showed the creativity of hip-hop, you know, because all of the groups were unique and distinct and creative and had our own thing. It was amazing.
And from what you can recall, because obviously this tour was a long time ago, but what's one of your most fondest memories you shared just being on tour? Because you just said, like, Fat Boys, you said Run DMC, so many other legendary acts. So what was one of your most fondest memories that still resonates with you of this tour today?
The night we played Detroit stands out. I'm on stage with finishing sound check, and I'm on stage, and they opened the doors, and the people came in the doors and ran down the tops of the chairs. They didn't run through the aisles. They ran down the tops of the chairs to their seats. I'd never seen anything like that. And Run looked at me and said, "Yeah, welcome to Detroit, man." that was amazing. And that whole show, and it's just a coincidence because we changed up our show for that night. And so we set it off, and the whole show, everybody killed. Everybody killed. I remember that show forever. Forever.
Yeah, Detroit is definitely a completely different atmosphere from what I heard, man. But they definitely were super excited to get to their seats, just to say the least.
Oh, yeah.
And also, as well, in the year 1990, you actually released your solo debut album titled Bang the Drums. I was wondering if you can actually just tell us a bit more about this album, and of course, what actually made you decide to venture into a solo career?
Well, it's solo, but it's what I like to call project, which is why I released it under the name Push Pull, and not under my own name. Eventually, I'm going to put out stuff under my own name, or one of my names, or maybe all of my names. I don't know. But I grew up being a George Clinton fan. He did projects of different groups and same people, but under different names. And I wanted to do that. But what drew me there was, because our phase of hip-hop and the music, we were creating our own music. But hip-hop went to samples, and samples, I'm not knocking sampling. I love sampling, and I did a good bit of sampling myself. But I wanted to create my own music. And at this time, house was exploding. And in house, I had the freedom to use my creativity, use my keys, use my synths, develop my own sounds. And I figured, let me do an album, and instead of trying to compete with what everybody else is doing, I'll do an album of house music, but my own distinct style. So I merged it with African vibes, and I merged it with jazz. And I didn't care about whether it would sell or not. I figured I was going to do what I loved. And that became the Push-Pull Bang the Drums album.
And I gotta say as well, in my personal opinion, definitely a phenomenal project, man. I really do suggest if people haven't heard that, they need to go out and check that one out.
Have you heard the Dream to Science project?
I have heard that one, yes. I actually have heard that. Well, the other one that I really love that you actually put out was actually in like 2005, where you actually released Destination Earth. That's another good one as well.
Thank you. Yes, that was when I turned back to Newcleus. I was producing other people for a while, and I said, let me get back to the Newcleus stuff. And Destination Earth was written as a vocal record. But when Jonathan Farron mixed it down, he took the vocals out and made it instrumental. So I said, let me put the vocals back in it so people can get to hear it the way it's supposed to sound. And that's how that whole project began.
And also as well, I actually read that on via Discogs that you actually had the opportunity to do songwriting for Lil Jon and the East Side Boys on the song Oh Big Mama that was featured on the Big Mama House soundtrack. I was wondering if you can actually tell our listeners a bit more about this opportunity, and of course, what was it like just adding your touch onto a Lil Jon song?
You read that on Discogs? I don't know anything about that one. I've never met Lil Jon or worked with the East Side Boys.
I gotta say, I am glad that I brought that up. That way, if any other individuals...
I am too, because maybe they use some of my stuff and they pay me. I'm gonna have to check it out.
But what I'll do, actually, since I actually found it on Discogs, I'll actually shoot you the link after we get off the air to your Facebook. That way you can actually check that one out.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I do got to say, Little John, if you're listening to this, my apologies, man. You know what I mean? My apologies. But also as well, man, I actually noticed that Newcleus actually had the music actually on some of the most iconic video games of the early 2000s as well. I was wondering, what was it like actually hearing Computer Age on Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX, and of course Dance Dance Revolution and DJ Hero 2 as well?
Oh man, it was such an honor. You know, that is such a different experience to actually see your stuff come up in video games and know that it's now reaching people who may have never heard it otherwise. You know, it's an honor and a joy to me. It's a blessing.
And also as well, in 2005, you were actually featured on King Just's album titled No Power on Earth on the song On and On and On. I was wondering, how did yourself and King originally get connected? And of course, what was it like just working alongside him in the studio?
King Just is my cousin. And so he you know, we came up, he used to come in and, you know, saying that this is what he wanted to do. So, you know, because he's my little cousin. So after, you know, his whole situation, you know, soured, he came to me and he said, look, you know, can you help me out with production? Can you help me out with guidance and all that? And I'm, you know, he's family. So we brought him right in there. And, you know, I'm not an MC. He's an MC. That boy can rap off the dome for an hour. I'm not. I have to write my stuff down. But I think when I write it down, I do a halfway decent job. And, you know, hip-hop is all about, you know, battle mentality, all about the competition. So we kept that going all the time, and it drove both of us. But he's my cuz, man, so working with him is a joy, always.
And I gotta say as well, that song also as well was actually on a Papa Wu compilation record as well. That's where I originally first discovered that collaboration between yourself and your cousin as well.
It's on a Papa Wu compilation, really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I know the Method Man song is on there. They didn't have permission to use it, so you can send me the link to that one too. They licensed one song, and I just realized that they've got it up streaming now, and they only licensed it for 5 years. And those 5 years, long time, been up, and they didn't license it for streaming because streaming didn't exist yet. So a lot of people in this business don't know the business and do what they want to do. So I got to call some people over there because, you know, Papa ain't with us no more, God rest his soul. But I'm going to have to talk to some people up there.
And I gotta say as well, for anybody that is listening again, my apologies, man. You know what I mean? Sometimes us interviewers, we do our research.
I apologize for that. If they've got my stuff on their compilation, no, thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I'd rather not be in the dark about that.
But also as well, man, you were actually on the radio as well. So aside from being such a phenomenal, gifted artist, you were actually on the radio every single Saturday night, where you actually take over the airwaves over at Global Funk Radio, where you air Jam on the Groove. I was wondering if you could actually tell us a bit more about your radio show, and of course, what actually made you decide to venture into this aspect of the music industry?
Well, right about the same time that I started bringing Newcleus back and started reviving our Newcleus situation, my youngest son, who at the time was a teenager, he's been DJing since he was 7 years old. You know, my oldest son, he rapped a little, but he wasn't really following his pop's footsteps. But my youngest, he begged me, and at 7, I turned over the turntable to him, and the man, rather, because he's not a boy anymore, is a master at the turntables. So 2004 or 5, I was interviewed at Global Funk Radio. And I liked what was going on there. And I asked them, well, you got any slots available? Because my son DJs. And I nailed it home and said, I'll do the show with him. So basically, it's a vehicle for my son, you know, but it's also something that I enjoy. And at first we played hip-hop and electro, but my son plays everything. He loves everything. And I said, instead of putting ourselves in the corner and just playing one type of music, you play everything that you want to play every week, and I'll play everything I want to play every week. So it's developed into a 2-hour show. He does the first hour, and he basically does master mixes the entire hour. If you tune in, folks, you will be blown away. That's how dope a DJ he is. And then I just come on and I play what I want. And I play good music. But it could be jazz, it could be funk, it could be disco, it could be house, and anything in between. It might even be rock and roll. You know, but it's going to be good, it's going to be funky, and it's gonna make the ride.
And I'm going to say as well, that's the one thing I've always loved about your craft as a DJ, you know, because a lot of DJs, unfortunately, nowadays, they don't really learn how to be transparent, where they can play all different kinds of music. They're always stuck on one genre. That's why I really like listening to yourself, Cozmo, because you really do bring out all the genres kind of into one broadcast, man, and you know how to do it very thoroughly and perfectly at that as well.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. Thanks.
And also as well, because I do know as well that Global Funk Radio, I do know there's a lot of radio stations out there nowadays, so I have to ask, what is a direct way individuals can actually slide on through and check you guys out every single Saturday night? And of course, what time as well?
Our show is on 5 p.m. EST every Saturday. And the URL is www.globalfunkradio.com. Spelled exactly as you hear it. globalfunkradio.com. And we also do a simulcast on my Twitch. And that's a little harder to remember, but if you're on Twitch, slide over to Cozmo, Cozmo, Disco, Dizko. Cozmo, Dizko on Twitch. And we simulcast the show every week. You get to see how the stew is cooked.
And I'm going to ask first and foremost, Cozmo, what is next for yourself, man? Because I do know that currently you're still doing your music thing. You're still, of course, on the radio. But is there anything we happen to miss during tonight's broadcast? Anything else you do still want to touch on and talk about or promote when we still got you here live on 97.7 FM this evening?
Yes, we have a new album coming. I'm putting on the finishing touches of it now. The album is called Jam on Returns. Newcleus, Jam on Returns. And if you look, we released a single at the end of 1979, and then the pandemic hit and destroyed everything. But the single's called Summer of '79. And it's out there, but I'm probably going to, since everything got the kibosh for a couple of years, I'm probably going to remix it and put the new mix on the album. But, yes, Newcleus, Jam on Returns. Look out for it. It's coming.
And also, Cosmo, this is the time in the interview right quick that I give a chance for the individual that does slide into the radio station airwaves. Just a chance to give, like, shout-outs to whomever they want to give shout-outs to, but most of all, your social media handles. That way our listeners can follow you and stay updated on everything Cozmo D if they're not already doing so.
Shout out to hip-hop. Shout out to independent producers everywhere. Shout out to everybody who's struggling to make that music happen. And here's my most important word of advice. Own your stuff. Own your masters. Hold on to that. No matter what you do, you make sure that you own your music, because there's power in that, and eventually it could be the thing that keeps you going. My Instagram is Cosmo Disco, My TikTok is Ben Cosmo D CNAC. There's Ben Ben Cosmo D CNAC CENAC, and on Facebook I'm Ben Cosmo D CNAC. If you want to find me, folks, just use Cosmo with a Z. COZMO. Just Google that. You'll find me wherever I am in the world. I'm the only real Cosmo with a Z, so it's easy to dig me up, man.
And I got to say, first and foremost, Cosmo, thank you so much, man, for just actually giving us a bit of your time here this evening and sliding into the 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM airways, man. It definitely was an honor.
The honor is mine, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you as well, man. Thank you so much, and I'm pretty sure down the line we'll definitely talk some more soon. But for now, definitely have yourself a phenomenal Sunday night.
You do the same, baby.